Yep. So in your start button, we're looking for Revit 2022. You may have the shortcut on your desktop, but let's double click into the program to make sure it opens correctly for everyone. All right, so everyone has something that looks like this. Just the way I introduced SketchUp, that we don't want to remember where all of the buttons are. Cool thing about Revit is that it's extremely technical, and we can do extremely detailed drawings at many different scales that are very exact. The downside of that is that it takes a little bit longer to learn Revit than it does SketchUp. SketchUp is a nice introduction so that we can push-pull forms and create kind of something from our imagination relatively easily. Revit takes a little bit longer to learn, but if we've started to memorize the keyboard shortcut commands, right, like M is move, L is line, or C is copy, or CO is copy, C is circle, right? We're going to use those same keyboard shortcut commands that we used in SketchUp in Revit. All right, as we've gotten through organizing ourselves with SketchUp and learning a little bit more about how OneDrive works, I hope, that we're at the place where we can start to depend on that kind of online cloud saving system. So I want you all to open up your OneDrive. And I think my recommendation now is to go through the My Fairmont portal and open up OneDrive in that way. And we're going to create a folder for week 5 in your OneDrive. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let you do that on your own. All right, once you have a week 5 folder set up in OneDrive, we're going to get back into Revit and create a new file. I'm going to go on the left side, click New, and then click the Imperial Construction template and go down just one to Imperial Architecture template. This is going to set up our measuring, our views, and allow all of us to use the same template to learn. All right, and then let's hit OK. Let's hit Control S to save. I'll click my desktop, and I'm going to name this 02, 07, 22 Revit Intro, and hit save. I'm going to call the top part of our screen the ribbon. So the ribbon has a whole bunch of tabs. Right now we're in the architecture tab, but I can click to structure, steel, all the way down to modify, right? So when I say the ribbon tab, that's kind of the area that I'm asking you to look at, this row of tabs. We have some quick buttons above that we'll use today. Most of us, I hope all, have 2 boxes on the left-hand side. I'm just going to pull one of mine out so that you see they actually are separate. One's called Properties, and one's called Project Browser. But we're in one drawing right now, and it's just called Level 1, right? And we see some square and triangular symbols there. Those are actually elevation markers, and those can take us to other drawings when we click on them later. But every drawing that we have open is actually going to be organized in the project browser. Don't move yours around. I will move mine and move it back. But if I pull my project browser out, I see that I have floor plans, ceiling plans, elevations, right? So you should have the project browser. These things, when we kind of minimize and move them around the page, can sometimes just get lost somewhere. If we need to find them, we can use the keyboard shortcut commands, which we'll learn, or you can go to the View tab. But all right, we'll wait till anybody else loses them and learn how to find them again together. All right, so these two browsers are going to be important for every line and every 3D model we draw in Revit. The properties are going to tell us everything about what we're drawing. So if I draw a wall and I touch the wall, the properties are going to come up and tell us it's made of brick, or it has an R value of 15, or it is 15 feet tall. So the properties tell us about the things that we click on, like what they are and what their attributes are. The project browser, is going to tell us what type of drawing we're looking at. So we're going to be working with plans, sections, and elevations. And we can also start to look at Revit in the third dimension, right? So the project browser is going to let us kind of flip through all the types of architectural drawings we'll be using. Okay, so we should have just our open first screen. We're going to start to work with a command, just wall. So to draw a wall, the keyboard shortcut command is WA. Right, so when we type WA, our cursor changes, right? And I just want you to draw a square on the page. Doesn't matter the size, but try to draw a square, and all I'm doing is just clicking the corners, and Revit will automatically connect the elements. I want to make sure that you're drawing that square within the elevation markers. So the elevation markers are that symbol that looks like a square with a triangle connected to it. Let's say you're curious, right? What is the keyboard shortcut in Revit for wall or move or align? If you can remember one keyboard shortcut, and that is KS for keyboard shortcut, it brings up a whole menu of keyboard shortcuts. So let's type in KS. And let's say I can't remember how to draw a wall. I can type in wall in the search bar, WALL, right? And it tells me that there's a shortcut assigned to draw a wall with WA. Before I got into KS, I hit escape. Is anybody else having trouble getting into keyboard shortcut? All right. So I can type in other things like move, right? When I type in move, I see there's a keyboard shortcut MV, right? And I find that it's much easier to tell Revit what I want it to do instead of looking through the ribbon. All right, so let's hit cancel. And we're going to draw a few more things. I like looking in 3D all the time when I'm drawing in Revit because then I can understand visually the height of the wall I'm drawing. If you ever want to find a 3D view, you can find it in the top of the ribbon. So I'm going to refer to the commands in Revit. If I'm saying ribbon, it means look at the top. There's tabs at the top and buttons at the top. And then I'll also refer to the properties and the project browser, those banking on your left. So at the very top of the ribbon, there is a little house. And when I hover my mouse over it, it says it's the default 3D view. I'm going to click that. And then what happens in my project browser is that all of a sudden there is a tab or a line for 3D view. So more times than not, there's a couple ways to find the drawings we want in Revit, right? You can look for the button or you can look for the drawing in the project browser. All right, I'm going to change the wall just so that you can understand what happens when we select the wall and look at it in the properties bar. So in our 3D view, let's select one wall. And then I see in my properties bar that it comes up just as this generic 8-inch wall. Let's click on that image, the basic wall generic. And when I click on that, I see that there's a lot of preset walls that Revit already has for us. Good. So that when I input my survey of engineering technology, which we'll be working on, they already have the 8-inch CMU wall or a drywall with metal stud. Good. But for today, let's just choose brick. So let's choose that first exterior brick. And then I want you to start rotating around this 3D drawing. So this is a little different than SketchUp. If I hold in the middle rolling cursor, I can pan, right? It's like that hand in SketchUp. If I scroll that middle cursor, I can zoom in and out. But if I want to rotate, I'm going to hold Shift. Okay, so Shift helps me rotate around my object. So I want you to take a look at the wall we've created. That's a little different. That brick should have a brick base at the bottom if we selected the first one. All right, let's say I want that wall to be a little shorter. I'm again going to touch the wall in 3D. And I see that these little tabs at the top and bottom appear. If I want to make it shorter, I can type it in the properties bar, or I can use the tabs. So the tabs aren't going to make the height as exact, right? But just experiment. Pull a tab down. And then in our properties bar, just take a look under unconnected height and see that you have a dimension bar. Why don't we type in 14 feet and enter? All right, so we can also tell it a very exact dimension to define a height. So let's say I want 2 other walls in this room that we're drawing to be this brick banded structure. I can use the concept of matching, right? So if I hit escape and type in MA, I'm going to touch the object that I want everything else to look like first, touch it once, and then just click the other walls. So don't do all of them, just 3. To get out of commands, I'm just hitting escape. On your wall is rendering on the inside. If you go back to plan and touch the wall, there are little arrows. So if I touch the arrows, it just flips the direction of brick, right? So now I have brick on the inside. You don't need to do that. That's just how we're able to flip. All right, so most of us have 2 drawings on our screen right now, right? If we look across the top ribbon, just below the ribbon, we have 2 tabs. One says level 1. We click on that, we get level 1. And if we click on 3D, we go there. If you want to click back and forth fast, hold Control Tab down, right? And so when I have lots of drawings open when I'm working on a project and I want to look at the elevation or 3D, I can quickly hold Control and then just tap Tab to flip back and forth. If you want both drawings to be up side by side, you can say, I want this to wall tile, WT. So hit WT. And then if you want it to go back just to one drawing, you can hit TW. All right, so why don't we use some tools that we already know from SketchUp? And those are like copy, mirror, paste. Let's go back to plan. How do you guys think we copy? Control C. Yep. All right, so let's select the object. Again, I'm just going to click on the upper left-hand side, drag my mouse right, hit Control C, and when I hit Control V, notice that here I have nice dimensions. I have a ghost of what I'm trying to paste. Why don't you paste it, I'll come back, 150 feet off to the right. I'm just going to hit 150 feet, enter, right? But a drafting line, we only see in the view we're in. So we're going to type in DL for drafting line. And I want you to draw a rectangle inside of the walls that we just created. So I just hit DL. I want to use an align tool. I want to align my walls I drew to these lines. Align helps in so many ways when we're drafting. Do we want to align a height or a width? Is it working? Yes, okay. So let's type in AL for align. Again, I'm still in floor plan view. I'm going to click first the line I want to align to. So click the rectangle line and then your wall. And you're going to do this on every side. So every time you touch a line, then you touch the wall. And then let's just draw one more kind of X in the center of our rectangle. Again, just DL. And I want you to see that we cannot see the drafted lines in the 3D view, right? So we only see drafted lines in the drawing we draw them in. So they're not modeled, right? They're just guidelines or drafting lines. I want you to draw a triangular section wall onto our rectangle. So I'm not going to tell you how to do that. Try to remember the tool. But I want you to draw some triangular walls in plan so that they look something like this in 3D. So I'm drawing an irregular shape so that when we rotate and mirror, you can recognize that your object is mirroring and rotating. All right. So back in floor plan view, I'm going to select my whole object. And I'm going to type in RO for rotate. Revit's going to put the rotation, the center of rotation, in the middle of what I have selected. Sometimes that's okay, right? Because I can just let it rotate around the center point. But other times, I'm going to select it again, hit RO. Other times I want to tell it the origin point I want it to rotate from. And in that case, and then click on the bottom left edge so that it rotates around a corner instead. I'm going to click again in my drawing, and then my cursor allows me to rotate this building. Why don't you rotate it 180 degrees, and I'll come over. You can type in 180 or you can move your cursor. I like Revit's mirroring because we can choose to make a copy when we mirror, which is helpful. All right, so let's select the whole object again. I can start to show you where buttons are in the case that you'd prefer the buttons. But again, in 2023, when Revit introduces a new version, the buttons might be a little rearranged. So, all right, the buttons for mirroring, when we select the object, they're kind of in the middle. I use to mirror on an axis. And I'm just going to select the right wall, right? And after I select that, it just is going to make a mirrored copy of what I just drew. What do you guys think undo is in Revit? Yeah, let's do that. Control Z. Okay, we're back to pre-mirror, right? When you hit again, notice, and there's just lots of little things to notice all the time in Revit. Right below the ribbon and before the drawing tabs, there's a little check mark that says copy. So if you don't want Revit to copy when you mirror, let's uncheck it so you see what I mean. Touch that right wall again, right? Then it won't copy, it'll just mirror. All right, let's hit escape. If the object that you've drawn triangular walls is not in the center of the elevation markers, that's these, why don't you move your object, MV, select it MV, back to the center of those objects. We're going to take a look at sections and elevations next. All right, we're going to draw a section marker, and we're going to find that in the View tab. So in the ribbon, go up to the View tab. I'll hold my cursor there for a second. And under the View tab, really close, there is the section, like near the center of the ribbon pane. All right, let's click on the section. We'll save our project in a minute. I'm going to touch on the left side of my building, drag the section marker to the right, and click again. We're going to explore some drawings in the project browser and get to the drawings also right from my floor plan. Do you guys see under elevations that you have an east, north, south, and west elevation in the project browser? Okay, I see some yes, right? So I'm highlighting that in my project browser, and it looks like I have 4 elevations. That corresponds to the elevation markers I see here. So we're going to think of plan north being at the top of the page. So the north elevation is at the top, south is on the bottom, east is on the right, west on left, okay? So when I double click, I can click the symbol, I can click the triangle twice. It's going to bring me to the north elevation, which is highlighted in our project browser. So all of these drawings are created for me. If I go into the project browser on the left-hand side and double click the elevation from there, I can also get to drawings. When we created our section, it created something in the project browser. It created sections. I can expand by hitting that plus mark and then double click my section. Okay. Working now? Okay. That's okay. And remember again, holding down Control and just flipping, like touching tab. That allows me to get to all of my drawings rather quickly. if I do WT wall tile, right, I have 5 drawings open, but that lets me draw things in many different, or look at it from many different views at once, right? So let's say I start working with, why don't you touch one of your triangular walls, see how it highlights it in other views, right? Right, why don't we match that brick wall to every wall, and let's delete that second object we drew. All I'm going to do is just select that copied object and hit delete. And then I'm going to hit MA for match, touch my brick wall, and make all of these other walls brick. So my 3D view looks something like this. Again, if you want the wall to flip, just touch it in your plan view and locate the little arrows that pop up. So again, if we WT wall tiled, if we want to get out of seeing 5 things at once, we just do the reverse, TW. And if we're in the view we want to remain, that one is the one that will fill up our page. Actually, before we do a site, let's do 2 more things. We're going to put a window and a door. All I have to hit is DR for door. So DR, I'm in the 3D view. You can really be in any view. I'm just going to hover my cursor over a wall, and I can put as many doors as I like. So I'll put 3. If I want to do a window, I'm just going to type WN. WN. Again, holding my cursor over any wall, and a window pops in. If we go to the level 1 tab, we then see the door swing. If you want the door to go in, you can click the door and use those same arrows that we flipped the wall to flip the doors. So touch a door and you can change the direction of its swing. A couple different ways to look at our drawing. I'm going to zoom into a corner, and you're going to notice that I have these really thick lines, and then I have the thin lines because that was the detail line I drew with the rectangle to align. There is one button away from where we hit that 3D house, the very top. There are lines on a button that looks like they go from thick to thin. I cannot work in a drawing with really thick lines, so I like the thin line. You can hit TL for thin line, or it's that button. If you want to get rid of that original rectangle we drew or the cross, we can just touch those lines and hit delete. But I find it easier to draft in thin lines. The other thing I want to see in plan is that I know that I created a brick wall, but here it just looks like 2 basic lines. If I want to see the contents of my wall in plan, I'm going to look. There's a little row at the bottom of my drawing that says 1/8 of an inch scale. That tells me the scale of my drawing, but right next to it, there's an empty box. If I click on that empty box and hit fine, I'll hold my cursor there. You can see the details of the wall appear, right? So now I see in plan, one wall has brick on the outside. This one should be flipped so that my brick's on the outside, right? I can slice walls. Like, let's say I want this triangular room to be a part of my main room. There's a tool called Slice, and I'm giving you a lot of keyboard shortcuts that we'll continue to use so you can memorize them. But if I hit SL, right? S as in Sally, L as in Lance, and just touch that wall near the triangular area. So I'm touching a rectilinear wall near the triangle. I can cut it. So if I hit escape, then I see that I've cut that wall. I'll do one more and I can come around and help. Then I'm going to trim. So I'm going to hit TR for trim. And I'm going to touch the parts of the walls that I want to keep. So I'm going to hit the top of the wall and the triangle, and it's going to trim my walls for me. So all these commands make drafting kind of quick and fluid. Does anyone want me to slice or trim again? Yeah? Okay, let's do it. So I'm going to hit SL for slice, and I get an X-Acto blade type command. Also, I hit escape all the time, and I might not be saying that. I hit escape in between all of my commands. So if you're having trouble getting in a command, hitting escape before you type the command might help. In SL tool, I'm going to touch the wall I want to cut. And then you'll see on my 3D a line appears. I've cut the wall. And then I hit escape twice. And my wall is now cut in half. Now I'm going to trim. So escape, TR to trim. And the thing about trim is you got to touch the parts you want to keep. If I touch the part of the wall that I want to erase, it's going to trim it at the wrong side. So I touch the wall I want to keep, touch the second wall I want to keep, and it creates a fluid wall. I'm still in the command, so I can hit the triangle wall again, the part of the rectangle wall I want to keep, and it trims there. We're going to go into the site plan. So we've been working just in floor plan, which cuts a floor about 3 feet off the ground. What do you guys think the site plan does? Top view, yes, like a roof plan down, yeah. So the site is going to be a view up in the air, aerial view. On our project browser, under floor plans, there is the site plan. So let's double click site plan. All right. There's a little marker in the middle. You can keep it there, it's fine. If you don't want to see the survey marker, you can click it and type EH. That means element hide. So I've just hidden it. So let's go to massing and site tab in the ribbon. I'll hold my cursor there. And you should, when you click on that tab, see a green topo surface and a tree. All right, so a couple things. I'm in the site plan and in the massing and site tab in the ribbon. All right, I'm going to click on topo surface, and then I get a whole new ribbon. When I hit topo surface, it kind of changed the color of my ribbon to cyan. There's an X and a check mark. Sometimes I'll be working in SketchUp and I can't do things because I'm in one of these types of ribbon commands. If you have a place where there's an X and a check mark, you just have to check things to finish it or exit to get out of it. It just might be something that's holding us up later, but we'll work through that when we get there. Okay, so it's changed our ribbon color. Look in the little bar above our drawing tabs and we see an elevation 0, 0 point, right? All right. So what we're doing in Revit is we're just going to put points in a site plan and tell it the height we want it, and it's going to build the topography for us, which is pretty cool. So we're going to leave it on 0 to start, and we're just going to click outside of those elevation markers at the top left and bottom left. And then about in line with my building, I'm going to click 2 more times and you'll start to see that Revit's building a site, but it's all a flat site at the 0, 0 elevation. Then I want a hill, so I'm going to change my elevation to be 20. So I'm just going to put a 2 in front of that marker. And then I'm going to click 2 more times and I start to see topography. I'm going to hit the check mark to get out of this command. And then let's see what it looks like in 3D. On a page yet. So we're going to create a sheet and then we're going to put some of these drawings on that sheet so that someday we can print it. So let's go to the View tab again. Just make sure you're kind of out of the topo editing or Revit's going to restrict what you can do. And we're going to click on Sheet to the right of the center. And I think we should all have a size E1. Is that right? Good. I'm going to hit OK. And now I have a sheet. So if we ever want to know where our sheet is in Revit, I'm going to look at my project browser. And if I scroll down like 4th from the bottom, you can expand a sheet. So that's where your drawing sheet is in the project browser. Okay, so just like we in Windows open up a browser and drag, like click a file, drag it to save it somewhere else, the same operation for pulling drawings onto a sheet in Revit. So we're going to look at our project browser and say, I want my level 1, my site plan, and my north elevation on this sheet. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click just once on level 1, click again like I'm going to drag it. So hold the cursor down and drag it onto the sheet and let go. And then do the same thing for the site. It's okay if they don't fit yet. And do the same thing for the north elevation. I'm going to call these the view port. I mean like the window that frames the view. All right. Viewport's what CAD called it. There's the viewport, the window, and then there's the title. Funny thing is, I can only move these on the sheet if I have deselected and I'm not inside the view. If I double click in this view, it grays everything else out. And some people like to make the mistake of getting into the view, grabbing the object and just moving it on the sheet like this. But that's moving everything in your drawing when you move it that way. So instead, if you're in a view and stuck, you can either double click out of the view or double click or click, if you're in the view, right click and say deactivate view. And that kind of brings you back into the sheet. All right, so we just want to make sure we're not double clicking in views when we're moving things around. You can grab our floor plan. And when you grab the floor plan in the sheet view, it's going to grab the title and the drawing, right? Why don't we hide some things in here so that it's a smaller drawing? I'm going to double click in the view, and then I'm just going to select the objects I want to hide and type in element hide or EH. I'm just EHing everything. And then I'm going to right click, deactivate view. So to move the title, you just touch the title. So you don't touch the window. I'm going to grab the title on its own, move it up, and then it's too long and I can't figure out how to make it smaller. I touch the window once and then I get the bubble at the end of the line that I can pull back. I don't know why it's so annoying. Okay, now it's small, and I think, will all of your drawings fit on the sheet now? Let's scale this too then. Let's get out of, we can right click deactivate view to get out of that floor plan. Why don't we go into your section then? Section or elevation drawing. If I'm in the view and look at the bottom bar, there's a scale there that says 1/8 of an inch. If you make that 1/16 of an inch, so 1/16 is in the middle, I've clicked the button for scale. And let's do one more thing. So we'll learn about crop regions then. So let's say that my scale is just too big. I'll make it 3/16. If I double click in the view, we can align the window frame to show less of the drawing. Just a little hard to find. So in the properties menu, scroll down until you see the area of extents. And there's a little line below it saying crop view. Click that check mark on, and the one below it, crop region visible. Now you have a frame that shows your view. Okay, click the frame, and it has little grabbing buttons on either side, and you can drag those inside the drawing. And we're going to talk about Maya Lin so that we can draw a real wall today. We're going to learn about Maya Lin, who is now in her 60s, but I am describing this architect to you because she actually started her career as an artist architect at the age of 22. She was still in college. I feel like she's very relatable to your age. Maya Lin is really well known kind of as a sculptor of the landscape. Again, that started out at an early age in college. So Maya Lin went to school at Yale. And when you go to really large schools of architecture, many times you can choose what sort of studio you want to be in. So if you want to be in a studio that studies skyrise construction, skyscrapers, you can go into that studio. Or like Maya Lin, she chose to do the funeral studio at Yale. As a part of that class, they needed to design, they could design a memorial or something within a cemetery. She found this competition for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. So her big idea for this project was, all right, it's a flat site. The Vietnam veterans, or the war, was kind of like a scar on those who went to war or lost their lives in war. What if I cut into the earth and implied my memorial to be like that scar? All right, so competition, her studio professor said, this is a really great idea. Why don't you submit for the competition? And among 1,400 submissions, she won. So that was when she was 22 years old in 1982. Again, in her words, I imagine taking a knife and cutting into the earth, opening it up. An initial violence and pain that would in time heal. So her simple board from 1982 shows a detail of what that scar in the landscape might look like, a description, and then a small detail. Very basic idea, very basic board. Okay, but then let's talk about what you might think of as a memorial if you were to design one, right? So if you think back to different kind of war memorials, what are some of the common things that you've seen in the past? Blood? Oh, flags. Thank goodness. Okay. Flags. Yes. Okay. Flags. What else? Names. Yep. Crosses. Yep. Like if there's a physical sculpture, what would it look like? A soldier, right? Like a lot of bronze casting. So we're going to talk about some architectural words today. One is paradigm. So a paradigm means, if we're referencing the monument, something that might be more similar to what you are telling me. Monument is flags, bronze sculptures. And what Maya Lin's idea was really a paradigm shift, right? I'm not putting bronze statues of soldiers at my monument. I'm cutting into the earth. I am doing the name idea, engraving 52,000 names or something like that. But even though she won this competition, you still need to kind of convince veterans and the city of DC that this is a good idea, right? So the paradigm shift, she's kind of changing the idea. Again, this is why people are hiring you, because you're thinking outside of the box. You're giving them a deeper answer to what it is that they want, or a deeper response to the project. So, not everyone met her idea with open arms. So when you visit the Vietnam Memorial, there are some bronze statues kind of off the site representing the same thing that she is here. So we're going to start talking about threshold and boundary. This relates to the work that you're going to do in response to Maya Lin's wall. You're actually going to have to propose something that relates to boundary or threshold. So let's take a look at this in Google Earth. I want you to open up Google Earth, and we'll talk about boundary and threshold together there. You can simply type in Vietnam Veterans Memorial, DC. Yes. Do you have any observations of kind of what the landscape looks like in DC? Flat, that's the right answer. Yep. Okay. So if Maya Lin's working with this flat site, but wants this cut in the earth, she's definitely going to need to do some grade excavation, right? So if we're walking on the north side of the Vietnam Memorial, the wall may be only 8 inches above grade, but we'll look at it. We're experiencing the memorial with kind of the depression in the earth. Okay, so let's zoom in to an aerial view. So I'm going to describe what topography is doing in both of these views. It's not three-dimensional in my view. Maybe your Google Earth is here, but what Maya Lin wanted you to do was experience kind of sinking into the earth as a progression, right? So she's processing people from the right and left leg on the farthest points, and then everyone's kind of meeting in the middle. So at the left and right point of this wall, you start to go into the earth. I want us to look at Google Earth to determine what that dimension is. All right, so I can hover my mouse on the north side and get 1 dimension, and then hover it kind of over the walkway and receive another. I think if we hit the 3 bars at the top left column to get menu and go down to settings, you can choose units of measurement, feet and miles there. Is what I'm asking confusing? Okay. All right. So when I hold my mouse over the north end, I have 18 feet in height. But then when I hold the mouse, there's a little elevation marker in the bottom right corner. Now, on the opposite side, then it says 9 feet. So I'm looking at about a 9-foot height wall, right? Anybody give me a dimension from the middle pinch point of that wall to the outside? So how long is this memorial? It's another thing for us to actually be on the site and feel the distance and space, right? I mean, did you feel like this was a pretty large?
It was a lot bigger than I thought it would be.
Uh-huh.
Walking in.
Okay, right. All right. So before we get back to boundary and threshold, we're actually going to survey, and that's why we brought our tape measures, the hallway of engineering technology. Because if we can understand what the length of the hallway is, then we can start to understand what we're seeing in Google Earth and eventually what we're going to be drafting in Revit. Okay, so for those of us who are getting around the 230s, right now you can kind of see what that feels like. Yeah, okay, so the idea is that the hall is the same length as one arm of the monument. So that's really big, right? And then when we're going to draw this now in Revit, we're going to notice how tiny it looks in Revit. So let's go back to level 1. And I'm actually going to delete the site. Your site plan's probably not showing up in level 1. It might be in your site view. So you can open up your site view if you need to, if you don't see your site in level 1. So back in level 1, look along the bottom line, those little small tabs where the scale is, and click the light bulb. So we're in level 1 plan. And when I click the light bulb, the elevation markers and the section markers that I hid are probably in red. I'm going to select one of those elevation markers again, right click, and I want to find unhide in view, and then you're going to click category. Let's click on that light bulb again, and your screen goes back to normal. Because I've already pulled those window views onto my sheet, with the location of the subject being our first house-like structure Monday, we can actually draw in the same area, and then when I want to look at Maya Lin stuff, it will bring up those views of her project instead. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the whole building and type in MV for move. Click an endpoint and drag the house out about 500 feet. I'm splitting my screen here because I'm not going to measure the angle for the wall, but we will do that later. To the best of your ability, we're going to use the wall command WA, and I want you to draw a wall that is angled. Again, think back to Defund 1. You're looking at angles and drawing the same angle. You're in the middle of a wall command, and I want you to type in 230 feet, enter. And it's going to go outside of your elevation marks, but that's okay. I want you to click on the right triangle of the elevation marker, and you're going to see a blue line that appears. That line represents the elevation view that we're drawing. We're going to create another elevation view that respects the angle of this wall. Because I drew a wall that's 230 feet long. If I take a look at the elevation that's already done in Revit and dimension that wall, it's going to be, because it's skewed from the elevation marker, an incorrect length. So let's create a new elevation that respects the angle of the wall. All right, so to create new elevations, I'm going to go to the View tab in the ribbon. And there's an elevation button in the middle. I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to hover my cursor on the right side of the wall I just drew. And you'll notice that that little triangle and square are now oriented toward the wall. And I'm going to click my cursor so that that elevation marker is in the right place. Let's click on that new elevation triangle. All right, so I'm going to zoom out. Your drawing probably looks something like mine. Do you have the window box around the elevation? Yes? Click on that window box. That is called a crop region. And when you click on that window box, move the little tabs so that you're just framing the wall you just drew. You're going to touch that frame once again and scroll down in the properties. And you're going to uncheck crop region visible and crop region, and that should remove that frame. So we know that the wall goes from 8 inches all the way down to 9 feet tall. So the way I'm going to make my wall do that is by looking at it in a perfect elevation and drafting what the wall should look like in elevation. Let's first look at levels so that the level markers, that's those little grid lines. If we zoom in, I can see level 1 and level 2. On level 2, let's touch the 10-foot dimension. You might have to touch it twice. And let's make that 9 feet. And enter. And so then your level 2 should now be at 9 feet. And that's just going to help us and give us a guide for changing the wall height. If you want these level markers to be outside of the wall, like on the right side of the wall, click level 2 again, and then locate, there's a little button at the top of that dashed cyan line. You're going to click on that little button that appears and just drag your elevations to the right. You have to click on the level before that bubble appears. So when I click on the level, a little bubble appears, and that's what I use to drag elevation markers off to the side. All right. And then why do I feel that it's so important to create levels? Select your wall and look in the properties bar. And do you see where you read top constraint unconnected? In the row of unconnected, if you click on the right side, you're going to have options that say you could constrain your wall up to level 2. again, there's just a comfort level of I lead you through all these exercises, all of these places and tools kind of start to make more sense once you're exposed to them a little longer. All right, so we're going to click on level 2, and our wall should go down to that level. Hit escape 2 times. You're going to just touch the wall once, and up pops in the ribbon a command called Edit Profile. So you're going to click on Edit Profile. All I did was touch the wall and this ribbon pops up. Click Edit Profile, and my lines should turn pink. All right, from here, I know that I want my wall to look like this because that's what happens when I experience this memorial. I walk in at the top, I go down the grade, and by the time I'm at the crux point, I'm 9 feet tall. So let's learn how to edit our wall like that. I'm going to delete the left pink line. And then notice in the top of the ribbon, near the check mark and the X, again, it means I'm in a command. When I see the check mark and X, you see a series of lines, like there's a line, a rectangle, circles, splines. Let's just click the first one, the line, upper left. And right where we deleted the line, from the top down, I'm going to create an 8-inch line. Because this wall goes from 8 inches all the way to 9 feet, the top of the wall height is maintained. So that first line I drew is just 8 inches. In our view, we're drawing this left wall, right? So let's think if we're walking in the yard above that wall. Like that is still really flat. Yeah, okay, yeah. But if I'm drawing an elevation of that wall, and maybe this starts to make sense for everybody, the wall actually always is the same height at the top, but I'm walking down, right, to by the time I'm at the crux, yeah, the top of the wall's not, yeah, it makes more sense when we look at a picture, I think. Okay, good question. So we have our 8-inch. I'm going to use the same command, that line tool, and work from the end point of that 8-inch, just hover around the bottom of that 8-inch, and then connect it diagonally to the 9-foot base on the far right side. And delete then the bottom line. So all I have now is just the sloping base. So the funny thing, again, I'm in a command in Revit. The top ribbon is that turquoise color. I have to tell Revit, check yes, I want out of this command, or no X, and it will just completely erase what I've done. So anytime I'm editing walls, these have to be a complete form. So I cannot say, yes, I'm done to this wall if my diagonal wall doesn't connect the base. If you have something like this, you can also, as a double check, just use TR trim, and that would bring those 2 points together so that we make a solid object. So let's click the check mark. And then I want to see what it looks like in 3D. So there's a hot button for 3D across the very top. And I want you to see what your wall looks like there. Okay, let's go back to level 1 then. So when I go to level 1, it looks like now half my wall is hidden, right? But we know some things about angled walls and floor plans. What's happening is it thinks I'm at level 1, level 2 is at 9 feet. So if I take a plan cut 3 feet off the ground and look down, it means I'm only going to see a part of this wall. Look in our project browser and click on level 2. Now you see the whole wall. And that just is because of where we're cutting the plan line. Does that make sense, or does anyone want me to explain that again, why we only have half a wall? So back to level 1. Let's flip back to level 1. So I'm going to click the wall in level 1. When you click the wall, look for a button in the middle of the ribbon that shows it's called draw axis, mirror draw axis. It's DM for a shortcut, but we're going to use this mirroring button because we can draw a line to mirror it accurately. DM. I'm going to click the right point of my wall. Angle could be around 70 if you have an angle. Click again. Oh, shoot. All right, yours probably worked. I need to tell mine to copy. All right, did everyone's wall copy when you mirrored? Great. Mine looks a little like it needs to be rotated a little. If you want to rotate your wall to make the angle more like the memorial, we're going to hit RO. I don't want to rotate around the point Revit tells me, so I'm going to hit space bar, and if you're frustrated, don't worry, I'll come around. Space bar, locate the rotation point at the middle. Select the length of the wall and turn it. All right, so you can check that by hitting DI for dimension. And then in the ribbon, you see that you could do the angular dimension. Click on that and then click both walls and drag the dimension line out. If you've lost the 3D view, go up to the top outermost hotkey bar, and there's the house. Or you can always find these drawings, under the project browser. There's an area called 3D views if you expand it. All right, I'm going to do a wall opening. So architecture tab. On the right-hand side of the ribbon, there's an area called opening. And you can see by face, shaft, wall. I want you to click on wall. All right. Once I'm in that command, I choose the wall I want the opening on by selecting the wall. Then I can draw any shape on that wall and it becomes an opening. Space. And I'm still in the command, so I can actually draw all kinds of openings. Is that working? And then to get out of the command, I can hit escape. But we can draw our own components by component modeling. All right, so I'm going to use CM. And when I type CM, all of a sudden you see that, oh, I have a desk that appears. If I click on the desk, I see that Revit there's trees in my Revit, right? All kind of furniture-like or family-like things. I can also make my own furniture just like I did in SketchUp by going to Model in Place. So look in the middle of your ribbon. I've typed CM, middle of ribbon. Click model in place. And it's asking me, well, what are you trying to draw here? I'm just going to say that I'm going to draw furniture. So scroll down, touch furniture and hit OK. And then the name furniture 1 is fine. Now it looks like I'm in a command. I'm asking you to do quite a few things to get in this step, but it'll make your homework a little easier. I'm going to go to the Create tab in the ribbon. And then I'm going to hit the button Extrusion. And for this, I'm just going to do a simple box. So click on Extrusion. You have your drawing tools that pop up now. Click on the rectangle. And just draw a rectangle in space. And then you're going to hit the check mark. Check mark again to finish model. All right, and it looks like I have a rectangle on my site. If you've saved it, take a look in 3D. And when you click on that component, you can see that it kind of looks like something you'd build in SketchUp, right? You can use the little grabbers to make this thing big or small. Okay, so judging by the length of this monument compared to the hallway, this thing is really large. Okay, so if you are on the DC Mall approaching the monument, there is this boundary, it's an invisible boundary or some sort of threshold where you feel that you are either out of the monument or in the monument, right? So there's some sort of gateway. So part of your homework, we're gonna build a landscape topography here together, but a part of your homework is locating a boundary, a threshold, or a gateway to the monument. I'm going to go to level 1 actually. Touch the component model and MV, move it out of the way. Like maybe you delete it or maybe you want to use that later. Actually, let's go to level 2 because I can see the entire wall here. All right, I'm going to build a floor. Building floors is very similar to building walls. There's a button for it, or a tool. Let's find floor in the architecture tab of the ribbon. I'll hold my cursor here for a second. All right, so architecture tab, floor is like a quarter of the way in. I'm going to click on the button of the floor. And I have my drawing tools that pop up. Again, the color of the ribbon changed, so I must be in a command here. I'm just going to draw one side or one floor, one side of this monument again and use my mirroring tool because the slope of the sidewalk is something I'm going to have to work with, and I'd rather just do that once. So let's use the line in that tool. And I'm going to draw a rectangle that's parallel to that left arm of the wall. We can make it 16 feet wide. I'm just kind of making the line parallel, and then I'm thinking about mirroring this floor. So I selected what hopefully is a perpendicular line to the midpoint of the wall. Slope arrow right above it. And I'm going to draw an arrow from the outside of the concrete by clicking once, and then drag the arrow to the middle wall and click again. And then I'm going to touch the arrow so that in the properties bar, I have level at tail, height offset at tail. I'm just going to highlight the height offset at tail. And I want that sidewalk to be 9 feet high at the tail. So I'm going to type in 9 feet. Hit apply. And then hit the green check mark. And let's take a look in 3D to see what's happening. And it looks like my floor is having setting its base on level 2. So if I touch the floor, look in the properties menu at the level, it's one of the first lines. And there's a hidden drop-down menu in that row. If you click the right edge of level 2 row and switch it to be level 1, now we see that your floor slope accurately. And then I'm going to show you how to create topography here. And on your own, you must create boundary, threshold, gateway.
We're going to build the site in Revit using the Massing and Site tool. That's in the ribbon in a top tab. I will look for Topo Surface and be able to begin my drawing. If you are in any other level, 1, 2, you're not going to be able to see how the site constructs itself. So you need to make sure that you are in the Site tab, and you can click on that under the floor plans in the project browser. And we have to understand something about our elevation before we start placing points. So we're going to look just below the ribbon and above our drawing tabs to see that the default elevation is 0. Level 1 represents the 0 mark. Level 2 represents our 9-foot mark. So before we start placing points, we need to think that the wall goes from 9 feet height. The sidewalk near the wall goes from the 9-foot height down to 0. But on the north side of the wall, the grade is still at 9 feet. So let's begin with the 0 point, and we'll work our way up to both sides. I will zoom in, place a 0 point in the middle of the wall and on the outside of the wall. And then I'm going to switch my elevation to 9 feet. So I'm hovering in the ribbon just above the drawing tabs. I will zoom out and place a 9-foot dimension here. Also on the other side of the sidewalk, you can see that it begins to develop my slope. I'm going to imagine, because I look at the topography in Maya Lin's drawing here, that topography makes an arc connecting the 2 arms of the memorial. So I'll place a 9-foot dimension out here and repeat that on the other side of the wall, hovering at the midpoint. Now the wall is the boundary. It's holding back that earth. And the 9-foot dimension also exists on the other side. So I'll put a few very close points on the other side of the wall. Beyond that, DC is relatively flat. So let's continue that 9-foot grade in a square around the monument. It seems like I'm drawing it out of my window view. If I want to turn on the crop region, I need to first get out of the site. So I hit the check mark. I find the crop region by moving down in the properties bar, looking at extents, and clicking both crop region and crop region visible on. And then I can tap the window and drag those points so that I see my full site. Let's see what it looks like in 3D. I'm going to go above the ribbon to the hotkeys, look for the 3-dimensional house, and I see my default 3D view. I see that the land is respecting the wall, but I must have placed that 9-foot topo dimension too far outside of the back. So I'm going to move the point that I created here in this view. I'm going to touch the topo, hit edit surface in the ribbon, select that point, and because I believe it's always best to draw in an elevation or plan, I can use the cube on the right and touch top view. That gives me a perfect plan view. Type in MV and move that point closer to the back side of my wall. Again, I'm still in the command of topography, so I look for the highlighted part of my ribbon tab. Looks like I've moved out of the Modify Edit surface, but once I touch that tab again, it brings me to where I need to select that green check mark that gets me out of that command. I'm touching the topo, hitting Shift, and using my scroll button to move around the drawing. Okay, that looks better. I can continue to clean that up, moving some of these other points as well. Here we see the PDF I have uploaded on Blackboard. This gives you an idea of how I'd like you to finish this project. We see Maya Lin with her site-built model on the right, and we'll reflect back on what we've drawn in Revit as well. But we looked at the words boundary and threshold during class. You currently have the monument, and we've drawn a landscape around it. Whether or not you've been to DC, you at least now can appreciate what 230 feet looks like and feels like in person. And we see that we can reflect that in Revit as well. You need to determine for yourself, at what point on the mall lawn are you within this monument of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial? If there's an imaginary boundary, at what point do you cross that threshold? What you're going to develop in SketchUp with the use of CM, component modeling, or walls and wall openings, is a gateway or a threshold or boundary that reflects your idea of that entrance into this model, this memorial rather. So I've drawn a few iterations in my sketchbook, and then I've started looking more into the wall command. For my boundary or threshold, I wanted to create an unsmooth entrance into one side of the monument. So I looked at the command WA and explored the different types of walls that I could draw based on the drawing tools shown in the ribbon. You can draw simple rectilinear walls. You can connect points by clicking two end points of an arc and pulling that arc out, creating a wall. Or you can simply create curved walls using circle tools and snip, or the 2-point arc on its own. So that's what I've created here. Revit does allow us to imagine what it feels like on the site in 3D, but at times that aerial view doesn't quite capture what the feeling of the monument might be on the ground level. So I'm going to teach you camera view. Go to your level 1. Actually, let's instead go to level 2. It gives us a view of the entire thing, and we're at the 9-foot height here. And I want you to go up to the View tab. In the middle of the ribbon, there is the 3D view that we'll click, and we're going to click on the drop-down button at the bottom of that ribbon button for a 3D view and hit Camera. When I touch Camera, I see I have a small view camera in my drawing. I'm going to click once, project the shot of the camera to my memorial, and see that I am now at a certain height above the ground or in the ground. Revit puts my eye level at about 5'6". So what is it that I'm exactly seeing here? Why don't I close some tabs and do my wall tile? So when I select this object, I see that I was actually positioned below grade. I can hold Shift and adjust my view accordingly. 9 foot actually would be at grade level. So why don't I leave it at 15 feet as if I'm a 6 foot tall person, and I get an accurate view of what it's like to look down into that monument. And we can click on a wall in one view so that you can understand what we're looking at in the aerial. So to finish your homework for this week, once you develop your boundary or threshold, you need to take a couple snips of that, place that in a Word document, and in language describe your idea of threshold or boundary, and then save a PDF in your weekly folder to be turned in at the midterm point. I look forward to seeing your boundaries and thresholds and learning about them in class. This is the end of Lecture 10.